Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome back to another tropical outlook forecast here by Aiden with the forecast. And as you guessed, we're going to be keeping a very close eye on the Gulf of Mexico here as we're continuing to watch out for the possibility to see Tropical Storm Bill within the next possibly week or so. So keeping a very close eye on that. 7 to 10 days is what we're going to be really watching out for. And malls continue to be very consistent with this, so I decided to make another forecast on that as well. So we're going to be looking at the timing and locations, overall where we're looking at for this storm and whether it can possibly happen or not. And as well, we're going to be going over the general conditions to see whether it's actually favorable for this storm to develop. So it's going to be just a general forecast here on whether this storm can actually form and whether the conditions support it. But before we get in the video, be sure to smash the subscribe button if you enjoy my tropical forecast, especially as we do get later into December. And as well, I do recommend you guys smash that like button and bell icon. Both that for let's get in the forecast. Let's now go ahead and get a look at the new 12Z GFS here. And we do have a pretty exciting update here. So we are mainly watching out for the Gulf of Mexico for Bill. However, again, there are a few low pressures that do come off the East Coast here that we do have to very well keep a close eye on. Not sure if this, I really doubt this would actually become Bill or anything like that. But let's not go ahead and look at the Gulf of Mexico and Bay of Campeche specifically. So this is going to go basically for June 17th. So we're basically a week out already. And that's exactly when we're going to start seeing that low pressure to develop here in the portion of the Bay of Campeche. And by June 18th here, so 11 days out, or not 11 days out, sorry, 8 days out, we are watching out for that low pressure to get up to 1,005 millibars. So that's going to be the main time to watch out, 7 to 8 days for the beginning of this low pressure and possibly when it's already an invest maybe. And then as we go now to June 19th, this thing rapidly goes to 992 millibars. So we're talking possibly a pretty strong high-end tropical storm, possibly 60 miles an hour there. So the fact that this low pressure does kind of hover around and rotate around the Bay of Campeche for a whole 2 days, it could definitely signify this could very well become stronger than expected here in last runs. Because obviously, in the past few runs or the past 24 hours, the GFS has struggled just to get below 1,000 millibars. But now it's getting already at 992 before it even leaves the Bay of Campeche here. Again, very, very favorable condition in that region here. We're going to be seeing a lot of shear kind of just outside that region. But we do have a pretty strong moisture bubble that can very well help this storm kind of stay out of the path of that shear. But as it goes outside the Bay of Campeche into the west central Gulf of Mexico, this does run through a ton of shear, so it actually rapids quite rapidly to 998 millibars. So this will definitely weaken if it stays the way it is with that shear forecast. It's going to make it completely one-sided here. There's going to be a ton of shear as it goes into the western Gulf of Mexico. It's going to help make it a lot weaker here, and it will actually get to 1,000 millibars again. But then that ridge pushes that shear rapidly to the north here and then dips to the west, to the south east here. So it's going to allow for the storm to very well gain strength once again, getting to 991 millibars by June 22nd here. And it's going to get even stronger up to 989 millibars and maybe even 987 millibars by landfall for Texas here. So it's going to go through a pretty strong phase here in the Bay of Campeche. It's going to be hovering over this really warm water for a while. Then it goes out into the dead zone here where it goes to really a ton of shear. And then it goes back into the re-strengthening phase because of that shear kind of goes all the way up back to the north and the northeastern Gulf of Mexico. So very interesting here. And then it goes into a portion of Texas. So the main area to watch out right now is going to be portions of northern Mexico and portions of the south, in general, the western Gulf of Mexico coast there, from northern Mexico through all Texas and portions of Louisiana, since we're still watching out for Louisiana, since the European is still keeping a very close eye on that region here. So this is the latest 12Z, a pretty big update here, but I mean, models are still consistent on the Bay of Campeche being the area to watch out for. Let's not go ahead and get looking at the Canadian models, see what they have. So, of course, they still have those two low pressures developing here off portions of the eastern coast, getting up to almost 1,000 millibars there. But obviously, those will most likely just be a regular old low pressure coming off the coast here. So, nothing too crazy to watch out for. But let's not go ahead and get a look now at this Canadian model. So, they actually get this same time frame, June 17th, 1,000 millibars there, hanging and hovering over the Bay of Campeche. By June 18th, this thing is still hovering over the Bay of Campeche up to 1,000 millibars. So if it does hover the way it's going to be hovering based on the CMC and GFS, they do have this getting quite strong here, getting to 999 millibars. And then actually the Canadian gets this actually making landfall into the Brownsville area in northern Texas. So they actually have it kind of preventing going throughout that shear and kind of going that way instead of going all the way up like that, and then the European has it going like this. So overall, the three global models we just looked at, or we're about to look at, all have this western coast here. Let's now go ahead and get a look at the vorticity here. We want to get a look at the vorticity map for the Gulf of Mexico. So let's now go all the way up to around June 17th and June 18th is when we start to see that circulation, that vorticity within that low pressure or surrounding that low pressure. So you can kind of see that vorticity is going to ever so slightly get its act together. And by June 19th is when it gets to 992 millibars. And this thing really gets act together within 2 days that this low pressure gets into the Bay of Campeche. And it's going to continue to strengthen here by June 20th. It's going to get to its peak. At least we think it's going to get to its peak until it, or at least its peak before weakening again. Obviously, its peak's going to be 987 according to the GFS, but it's going to get to 992 millibars here. We have very, very tight vorticity and rotation within this low pressure here. So if it is counterclockwise, we're talking about a fully tropical system here with this amount of vorticity, and then it rapidly weakens because of all the shear here. It opens up the system, opens up the low level closed low pressure here. It's going to help weaken it rapidly, and then after June 21st, that shear goes all the way to the northeast Gulf and dips into the Western Caribbean. So we have all this without any shear whatsoever, thanks to that ridge moving northward. So this is going to allow for this storm to regain vorticity, regain strength and organization, and it's going to possibly again make landfall here for portions of south central, south east coast, or even possibly even Texas, or maybe even possibly Mexico, because GFS and GFS and Canadian are the ones showing it being within this region, while while European, I cannot get my models right, have it going up here. So we have GFS, and then we have Canadian, and then we have European. We have Euro going this way. So we kind of have a general outlook that we're kind of keeping an eye on for the western Gulf of Mexico. So we kind of eliminate the eastern Gulf of Mexico, and we obviously eliminated the Western Caribbean a long time ago. So we kind of really finally got an idea here of where this storm can very well go here. So let's not go and get a look at the GEM Canadian vorticity. So here's looking at the Canadian. So obviously by June 17th, they kind of have this whole scattered area of a central, you can see like a whole area of a low pressure with a lot of that vorticity. So there you have that area of low, the Bay of Campeche with vorticity surrounding it. And then it's kind of a huge area of vorticity, but it's very, very disorganized, and it seems it's very lopsided, which is probably the reason why it's only getting down to 999 millibars, but it kind of gets out together right before landfall there into portions of north central coast of Mexico, right there just south of Brownsville, Texas. Let's not go get a look at the European here as well. European as well is showing a pretty intense storm here. They do have the low pressure coming off the coast of the east coast, having some pretty good amount of vorticity. So that is something to keep a close eye on. I doubt that'll actually become built because that's literally in 2 days. So I think the National Hurricane Center would have already put something if that was going to be anything. But let's not go into the specifically Bay of Campeche and look at that. The European, it kind of has this developing there, and it kind of, as it does go through a lot of shear between June 19th. That's exactly why it's not going to be really organized, but by the time we get now into June 20th, that shear is really all the way to the northeast Gulf of Mexico, and that's going to bring a pretty intense landfall there for portions near Lake Charles and even near Beaumont, where we had that landfall of Delta, and where we had Laura as well make that landfall. So keeping a very close eye on this region here, because definitely keep a close eye on the European has been quite consistent with Texas and Louisiana, while GFS and CMC have been quite consistent with Texas. So overall, we're watching out for Texas, Louisiana, and portions of northern Mexico to watch out for landfall. So we kind of eliminate all these other states here. So if we kind of have a better idea, obviously it's still around a week out before it kind of develops, at least the low pressure itself, but we kind of have a little bit better idea of what we're expecting. Let's not go get a look now at the 10-meter winds here. See, so we can get a better idea of what we're looking at speed-wise and, not speed-wise, sorry, strength-wise. Obviously, it's going to change a lot, but let's go ahead and get a better idea of what we're expecting here, because obviously 987 millibars could very well be a Cat 1, but obviously a 987 could very well be a tropical storm, just based on how organized the storm is. So that's exactly why I'm looking at this, so we can get a better idea whether we're talking about a hurricane or whether we're talking about a tropical storm or a high-end tropical storm here. So here's a look now. By June 16th, there you have that area of that concern low pressure, possibly right at this point is going to be very well an invest by the 16th and by the 17th here can very well start to gain strength into maybe a tropical depression. Obviously, that's a little bit less likely, but still, we got that area of that low right there. You got that very strong wind up to possibly 34 miles an hour already. So very well talking about maybe a tropical depression as early as the 18th into the 19th here. Because look at that. Look at later the 18th here by 18Z. So by already midday in the 18th, this is already having up to possibly 42 miles an hour. So this is already tropical storm wind speed. And then by later the 19th, early the 5 in the morning here, we're seeing up to already 52 miles an hour. A pretty decent looking eye water here. So it's looking pretty good here by the 19th here. By the 20th, it gets even better, getting up to around 60.7 miles an hour here. So a pretty decent high-end tropical storm here. Actually more like a mid-end tropical storm here, so it's looking pretty good. There is going to be, like I said, some shear to the west. It's going to make it a little bit more lopsided. So we're talking getting up to 61, maybe the lower 60s, mid-60s is definitely possible. But as it goes through some shear, this is going to rapidly weaken to 45 miles an hour. Or actually not 45 miles an hour, so I'm going to weaken up to possibly 30 miles an hour to maybe even 35 miles an hour. So it can very well weaken back to a tropical depression. And then actually, once that shear moves out of the way, it's going to get actually to its peak there at 63 miles an hour there near landfall. And it's going to get even, basically 63 miles an hour landfall right there. So it is definitely going to bring in some pretty gusty winds here, but minimal impacts for Texas if it does continue to trend towards Texas, like very well Mexico. But if it were to go to Louisiana, we're talking a little bit stronger of a system because it does go through more favorable conditions longer if it does go to Louisiana. So if it goes to Louisiana, we're talking a different story. But if we're talking Texas, southern Texas, it's mainly going to most likely stay to a mid to high-end tropical storm. But if it were to maybe track a bit near Houston or Lake Charles, it's possibly going to be a high-end tropical storm, low in Category 1. So that's what we have right here for the 10-meter winds on the GFS. So again, it does seem like it's most likely going to stay a tropical storm throughout its whole track, as it is going to be limited to a lot of factors, because obviously it's going to have a time frame where it's going to weaken a lot, so it's going to limit it to it being a tropical storm only. So that's something that literally the only limiting factor really. So that's what we have 10-meter winds. Obviously, this will very well change quite frequently by the time we get to the 16th. So it can very well trend. Maybe that shear is not going to be there as much, so that can help it strengthen, or that shear is going to eliminate it. So it's just definitely interesting here, because I mean the Weather Channel has already started talking about it. When the Weather Channel talks about something over a week out, it's definitely interesting here. But let's not go ahead and get a look at the other models. So let's go ahead and get a look now at the NCEP ensemble here for the probability of a tropical cyclone here within the next 120 to 240 hours here. So we do actually have an area there of percentage in the Bay of Campeche between 120 hours to 240 hours, and it's actually a 30 to 40%, so it's actually not too shabby there. We do have those already assembled tracks here, getting it mainly towards portions of Texas and Mexico, but we do have a few assembled models getting it, like the Europeans getting it into areas like maybe Houston, Galveston, or even Lake Charles. So we do have a little area there, 30 to 40%. So hopefully it stays at least consistent, because I don't want to see it go 30 to 40 to 0 10 to 60 to 70 80 real quick. I mean, if it does stay consistent like this for a little bit, I think we're definitely looking at for something very interesting here, and definitely something very likely. So 30 to 40%, it's been quite consistent with this percentage for the past few days, and models have been consistent with the track somewhat, and speed, or not speed, sorry, I keep saying speed instead of strength, but there have been a few runs where they have showed it being a lot weaker, a lot stronger. So either way, we do have a little bit better idea that this will most likely, this low pressure will develop in the Bay of Campeche, and then it's story out. I mean, it's literally a history after that, because I'm going to go to Texas, Louisiana, or Mexico. I mean, who knows, it may start trending eastward, because we do have a little bit of a model going towards Gulfport, Mississippi, but obviously it's definitely not likely to say. I think anything west I think east of let's say central Louisiana is most likely not going to happen. It's going to kind of most likely stay here into the western Atlantic or western Gulf of Mexico, because the eastern Gulf of Mexico is just absolutely crushed by that ridge here, bringing extreme amounts of shear. So I think it's mainly going to stay there for the western Gulf of Mexico. Let's now get a look now at the European tropical depression probability here. So we do actually have within the next 1 to 3 days a 60 to 70, no, actually a 70 to 80% there off the coast of off the East Coast. So that's the reason why I mentioned those low pressures, but I still doubt any of those will become built. But let's not go towards later into the 16th. So by the 16th, this Bay of Campeche is already at a 30 to 40% there for a tropical depression winds. And then it goes a little bit more widespread by the 14th to 17th, a bit more widespread, 30 to 40%. We actually know that's the 30 to 40%. And then we have a small area of 40 to 50% by the 15th to 18th. So it's going to continue to move northward because if that storm does move north, like we're showing the models, so that probability, and then that probability kind of decreases at the 20th because the landfall is either the 20th or the 21st here based on what models are showing. So that'll obviously lead to the decrease of the probability of having tropical depression because it'll be making landfall. Let's now go ahead and get a look at the European tropical storm probability here. So we do have a small probability there up to a 20 to 30%. That actually has risen because it wasn't past 10 to 20% yesterday. So we are getting a slight increase in the tropical storm probability. And the reason why it's so low is because it's so far out. So obviously it would be a lot higher if we were 5 days closer, or you know what I mean, the same week of the system. But it's still at 20 to 30% today at least. So it is a slight increase, a 10% increase. Another big thing that's going to be deciding the storm strength is going to be the SSTs here. So these are the current SSTs right now as of June 10th. So we do actually have very warm waters there for a portion of the Bay of Campeche, specifically the western portion where we actually have around 29 degrees Celsius. And overall, the Gulf of Mexico is a lot warmer than what it was last week here when we first started talking about the storm. But let's go all the way up to June. It's going to be all the way up to June 18th. Look, the water's a lot warmer here and actually quite warm in the area that we're watching out for. Texas, Mexico, and Louisiana coast here. And actually off Louisiana, we're talking possibly 31.8 degrees Celsius waters. I mean, look at that, 31.8. And the Gulf Stream is going to really be warming up quite rapidly. I mean, look at the Gulf waters now getting up to waters at the Gulf Stream off the Carolinas are around 26 degrees Celsius now in the next few days. 8 days, I believe, it's going to get up to around 28 to 29 degrees Celsius. So overall, waters in the Atlantic are warming up rapidly. MDR, we're seeing a lot more 29s popping up, seeing a lot more 30 plus popping up there in the Caribbean now. Gulf Streams bringing up some really warm waters all the way up into where Anna formed, obviously in May. So, I mean, we're definitely looking at for some really favorable conditions. Let's go now to the waters on the 16th here. So obviously, if this storm's gonna be, if this low pressure is gonna be hovering over the Bay of Campeche for 2 days, in these waters by the 16th, and now you see the main day is gonna be the 17th and 18th when it's gonna be there. We're talking anywhere from 28 to possibly 29 degrees Celsius water. So that's quite warm. So if it is hover there, that can very well lead to this being stronger. And as well, if that shear does actually end up clearing out with these waters, we're talking about definitely a high-end tropical storm, low-end category 1 is possible. Obviously, I think it's most likely going to stay a tropical storm for its whole. I think the peak will most likely be 70 miles an hour. Obviously, that's really hard to give out a whole week out, like the peak. But that's kind of the general possibility based on what we're seeing here with the shear and all that. So obviously, most likely we will have to get a lot closer. Like we're talking 3 days, 4 days out to get a better look at the peak. And we're still 7 days out before this low pressure actually kind of develops, and we're basically around 8 to 9 days before this becomes a named storm. If it does become named, obviously it's still a possibility. This could very well not happen, but models have been consistent with this for about 10 to 11 days, specifically the GFS. I mean, obviously earlier in June they showed the Western Caribbean, but either way they have been consistent with the storm developing in the Western Atlantic since I believe May 29th, May 30th. So definitely very interesting here. But I mean, STs will be a lot better compared to now. I mean, look at now. I mean, obviously the waters are a little bit warmer than the Bay of Campeche, but obviously the waters will be warming up rapidly across much of the Western Caribbean. Look at that, the Western Gulf of Mexico. So if it were to go like this, it would definitely be a lot stronger than if it were to go there now. Obviously, we still have right now at the moment 24, 25 off the coast of Texas near Brownsville, but then it'll be anywhere from 28 to 28.5 to possibly even 29 off the coast of Texas. And if it does a European and it goes through to 30 degrees Celsius off the coast of Houston and Lake Charles, it's still going to be very, very interesting. Let's not go ahead and get a look at the shear here. So I've been mentioning the shear quite a bit. So the shear is going to be a pretty big limiting factor here. So by the 17th and 18th, obviously the storm is going to kind of be stuck right here in the bottom Bay of Campeche. So Obviously, there's a ton of shear across much of the Gulf of Mexico, but the Bay of Campeche is really untouched. As an area where that low pressure is, there's actually less than 20 knots there. And overall, across the southern Bay of Campeche, there's not more than 25 knots. So it's actually, the Bay of Campeche is the perfect place to see the storm develop here and gain its low pressure. By the 19th, though, and 20th, this does go through a quite a, or actually, no, let's go back there. So by the 20th, it does go through quite a bit of shear here in the 19th. So obviously, this is exactly why it's going to start weakening in the Midwestern Gulf because of all this shear. But after the 20th, really, it kind of clears out rapidly. So it's going to allow for this storm to really gain strength here. There's that low pressure right there. So we have all this kind of really untouched, basically, with that shear. The ridge kind of goes a little bit to the north, and then it dips that shear to the Western Caribbean and Eastern Gulf of Mexico, which is why the Eastern Gulf of Mexico coast is kind of eliminated from the picture. Look at that. There is really basically no shear whatsoever for like 3 straight days after that. So this could very well lead to this thing really gaining strength rapidly after it does weaken for a bit. And let's go ahead and look at the precipitation water anomaly real quickly. So we are missing a pretty large moisture bubble. So that can very well help this kind of eliminate the limiting factors. And if that were to happen, a moisture bubble and keep this low pressure closed, that would definitely change the whole side of the story here. But hope you guys enjoyed the video and see you guys later.